Good evening, everyone. Today is Wednesday, August 24th, 2022. This is the meeting of the Gloucester School Committee, and we are meeting at the O'Malley Learning Commons now, right? Learning Commons. I will read the preamble. Consistent with Chapter 107 of the Acts of 2022, this meeting will be conducted by remote participation. The public may not physically attend this meeting, but every effort will be made to allow the public to view and listen to the meeting in real time and participate when necessary. If you are calling in on a phone, you can press *9 to request to speak. If you are watching on a computer or device, there is a raise hand button that you can tap or press to request to speak. Please use either of these options during oral communications to be recognized to speak. I will state that the mission of Gloucester Public Schools is for all students to be successful, engaged, lifelong learners. And I ask that you stand and join me for the salute flag.
This is the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll move on to oral communications, and the rules are: the public shall have the opportunity at every regular school committee meeting to be heard under oral communications. Oral communications shall allow any resident who has a request or complaint of any nature relative to the school committee business to appear before the school committee, state their problem without debate, and the matter may be referred to the proper subcommittee. For items that are on the agenda, members of the public may address the committee with permission of the chair. Persons speaking on oral communications shall be limited to 3 minutes each and shall submit a copy of their prepared communication to the recording secretary. The school committee chair shall not allow access to individual performance or character. So if there is anyone in attendance that would like to speak under oral communications, now is your opportunity. Okay, I see no hands raised. We will now move on to to recognitions. Anybody have anything they want to recognize for the summer? Later.
Our staff, all
Okay. Should I recognize the Department of Public Works and the effort that's going on at the modulars at Beeman and Plum
I
Cove?
encourage you to recognize anybody you like.
Okay.
So I'd like to recognize all the parents at all the schools that have been keeping the backyard growers gardens going. Because it hasn't been easy, and everyone has been abiding by the water regulations and everything else just to keep everything ready so that when the kids are at school, students, the gardens are still doing fine. So I want to recognize all the parents and backyard growers.
So I have not seen the modulars, but the reports that we've received at school committee and the pictures show that the modulars are in very, very good condition at Beeman and Plum Cove, and the project's moving along and will be done and ready for school. So that's a really good thing that everything's in the timeline that kids will show up and they will, the work to shore up those places has been done, and that was really a necessary project. So I appreciate everybody who made the effort and kept that on track on time. Okay. Next item is the consent agenda. Anybody have any items they would like to remove? Seeing none, do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Second. May we have a roll call vote?
Mayor Verga.
Yes.
Ms. Watson.
Yes.
Ms. Weason.
Yes.
Chairperson Clancy.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor.
Yes.
I guess I should just point out that this donation from the Susanna Natty, for the Robert Natty Story Corner has been an annual gift to the district, and the funds go to rotate among the elementary schools or among all the schools to replenish library. So we're always great appreciation for that gift. Okay, deliberations on education issues. We have our first item, which everybody is dying to hear. We have a fabulous group of students that have participated. And I assume we'll turn it over to Amy Pasquarello and Matt Peskin.
I'll set it up just quickly, but I'll hand over to this group because they are more than capable and they may not all work, but I just want to say that tonight, the Nominations Committee, like our East Gloucester veteran students, current and past, with the support from the school leaders and staff, are going to unveil the 10 semifinalists' names for the school. And I'm just really pleased and really proud for this community, for these students and for these two school communities that our students are playing such a central role in this. It's been in this process not already, but we continue to be even more of this process as we narrow down the names even further. But just really excited to see the names and for everyone in the community to see the names. So I'll hand over to Principal Matt Busco and Amy Pasquarello to introduce folks and get forward.
All right, thank you, Superintendent Lummis. Really excited with this work that we've been doing here. Just come up with a name for our new school. But this first slide here is just to sort of go over all the things that we've done, sort of leading up to this moment right now. And we've really been working very hard to get the East Gloucester School and the veteran schools, two communities, to start coming together. We're going to be doing a lot more of that this year. So just a couple of things that we've done. And remember, this was during the pandemic, that the two staffs of East Gloucester Veterans Memorial have come together. We've had multiple professional developments. And we've really been getting the staffs to meet with each other. Started talking about how we're going to be breaking up the teams at grade level. So we've really done a lot of work in a pretty short time due to the pandemic. As we've really spent a lot of time last year, Amy and I getting the teams together. Grade level teams have worked together to plan platooning and special education programs. We've had a few social events after school with faculty and staff. We had bowling night from both schools. I had the best bowling score. I'll stop there. Anyway, so that we've been out together. We've had a very good time. We've had a few combined student events, both for the groundbreaking. We had our third graders go to the groundbreaking ceremony, both for East Gloucester and veterans. And then the topping off ceremony, we had our second graders go to that. And we've been just trying to think of many different ways to get our students together as well. We've started having joint PTO meetings. Both East Gloucester School and Veteran School have had one officer's PTO meeting from both schools and one joint PTO meeting so far. And we're looking to do several different things. We're going to have like trunk or treat and some other things that we do. We're going to combine those for the schools this year. And then of course we're like it says, we're going to start thinking about ways that we can share our fundraising together, things like that, but also keep East Gloucester will still have some of its things that they like to do, and there's things that veterans likes to do. So keep a little autonomy there as well, because we're both going to be saying goodbye to our communities too. So we're trying to be mindful.
So a little background on this committee. The school committee approved the naming process back in December of 21. It includes students from both East Gloucester and veterans. It also includes alumni from both schools. We started with students grades 3 all the way up to 10. We're going to the new school year, so now we're grade 4 through 11. We have a wonderful committee. We have a larger committee that's here today, but these are the wonderful people that have been here in the summer months. So it is a larger committee. So we voted, the school committee also voted that it would not be named after an individual. So with those parameters, we put out to the community Google form and also a paper option to make a nomination for a name. That was started, was for the whole month of April. They were submitted online, email, and also there were some written submissions. We had 71 nominations submitted. Some of them were duplicates, so we had about 50 individual names to choose from. We did some outreach to newspapers, email, websites, posters in the public, and social media, and we went from there. We took those 50. Then, as a committee, we worked together to narrow it down.
Yeah, so I can talk a little bit about what our committee work has been so far. We discussed the expectations on the task presented. We've been meeting most Wednesdays between February and June. We had an alumni group, both from veterans and East Gloucester, come and talk about, we had a series of questions for them, just about community and what you know the most about East Gloucester, what you know the most about veterans, Ward 2. And we got their input. It's very powerful. We also met with Adam Kukuru and Veterans Services Department about the naming as well. They wanted to talk to the kids about veterans in their community and what that means to them. And again, we had a series of questions for them, and it's really, the kids asked great questions. We got some great feedback. Then we started discussing all the nominations, and we narrowed it down to 10 semifinalists, which you're going to see tonight. As we did, we saw about the significance of each name to Gloucester, how it honors both school communities, histories, traditions, and of course, the school's values and purpose. And each of these slides is a presentation of our semifinalists.
So the students created the slides that we're going to show you. We're going to stop talking and let you hear from the students, because that's what everybody wants, who they want to hear from. But this presentation will be put online and out to the public, and at the end of the presentation, there is a Google form where people are welcome to give their feedback on any of the 10 names. It's not a vote, they can pick up to 3 names and tell us what they think. If they love it, or if they think it might not be the right one, they can just tell us what they think. But I'm going to stop talking and hand it over to our committee. And first up, we have.
So for the first name, it was Cape Cod Elementary.
Can we have you?
Yes.
Introduce themselves first before we.
Yes, so I'm the first group that's going to introduce yourself. Dawn, you want to start?
Sure. I'm Dawn Maloney. I am paraprofessional over at Veterans Elementary in Sub-Saturday.
I'm Paige Lindbergh.
Zoe Jackman.
I am Bethany Gallinelli. I teach 3rd grade at Veterans.
I'm Carrie Callahan, social worker as well.
I'm Caitlin Williams.
I'm Ellen Laurie.
I'm going to teach East Gloucester 4th grade.
So the first name was Cape Cod Elementary, and this name brought together Cape Cod, which helps with the ice and has stuff to do with like fishing and really brings it for the community. East Coast Elementary School, the ocean brings it to Gloucester. It's a big part of Gloucester. The fishing industry and seafood restaurants are also a major part. Settlers sailed the ocean to arrive in Gloucester, and settlers decided to live in Gloucester because of the ocean. And it's just an important part of the community, and the school will be a place where the people in the community can spend time together.
This is the name of East Hill Community Elementary School. So it brings together East Gloucester School and where Veteran School, East Gloucester School, or is being built now. It was all the hill. East Harbor Elementary School. The new school will be near the harbor. The new school will be facing Gloucester Harbor. The new East Harbor Elementary School will recognize the school's place in the East Harbor are a big part of Gloucester. Gloucester is the oldest fishing port. The harbor harbor has been a part of the community since 1606.
East Veterans Elementary School really brings together both communities. It has both of the names of the schools, part of what would be the new name. And for this name, it really had involved like the veterans that came and spoke to us, so we got to have their input.
Both veterans and East Boston schools face the Again, now is a combined inner city school that shares parts of the inner harbor as well as the city wall. This one is Seaside Elementary School, and basically both, we are located on the Atlantic Ocean, where the school is, here in Seaside. And we also do, seafood places. Fisherman's Memorial Elementary School, Fisherman's of Gloucester using the salmon help memorialize the men and women who contributed to the fisheries, and they also help build this community. Gloucester's fishing heritage is rich, and most families were connected in some way to the fishing industry. This name will help preserve this heritage, and the community of Gloucester is known for its fishing, and fishing has a lot to do with Gloucester and a big part of its community. So First Light Elementary School is, so on the east is where the ocean, we see the light first. So it's kind of the idea of first light, and then you start school, and it's like the new start for our kindergartners. And since it's a new school, it's the start for the new students. The first name is a combination of both school communities. Coming together, Gloucester represents our city and veterans, honoring the veterans who have served in the military. Our school will be an important part of the community, giving residents access to critical education, new technology, and beautiful workspaces.
Well, first of all, thank you very much, team. Great job coming up with some fantastic names, taking all the input from the community about those names. I have 50 individual names were nominated. Does the community have any questions? Ask either about the names or about their experience so far in meetings.
Yes, we have a couple names, couple questions.
Just, I'm assuming for most of you, this is the first time on a committee. How do you like working on a committee? And share an idea about the report for us?
I thought it was fun just to get to have other people's inputs on like how they feel about the new school and really getting to work with a bunch of different people on a big project like this. I thought it was fun.
I would say the same thing. I thought it was cool to talk to other people and work in a big group and be a leader and have a say in the big things in the school, and it's fun to work with.
I found it really fun because like getting accepted. It's very big. It's like not very good. I thought it was fun.
I have one that says that's been in such a big process thing. That you not like one people things. So
Maybe it's the first time.
And you also got some VIP tours of the building, to sign the lead for the topic of ceremonies. They have a whole extra special opportunities as well to participate.
And who are we missing from that committee?
We get missing 2 third graders from, rising 4th graders from East Gloucester, Penny Gibbons and Brandon Simon. We're missing Ryan Brigham, who's a rising 5th grader. We're missing our middle schoolers today. I think we'll be together, Addie Miro and Janelle Bernier. And then from veterans who were in the.
We're missing rising fourth grader Iker Ariaga, rising sixth grader Ava Harrington, and Natasha.
And
Yes.
DSA.
yeah, and Sophia Andrews is another high school that's on the committee as well.
So it's sort of a follow-up, but how do you feel like being on this committee helped you prepare for the joining of the schools? How do you think you can, affect your classmates with that as well?
I won't be going to school, but I think it'll be like helpful because, especially for these kids, because now they already know each other when they combine schools. And like now they're a part of like their names are in the building and stuff like that, so it'll just be more like, won't be such a shock when they all go to school together.
I said these two got to know each other, but then they informed that they're cousins, so.
Love it.
Go ahead.
Since you've done some exclusive site visits, is there something in particular you're really looking forward to going to the new school? That you're seeing in progress?
Or reflect on if you had been able to have the opportunity to have this school. Right?
I'm just excited to see what it's gonna look like, and the fact that our names are all in the building, I think is pretty cool.
I think like the school, like I think the people that will be able to go into it, they will really like it. They like put a lot of hard work into the school. I think that the school looks really nice and it's gonna be a great opportunity for everyone to learn all together with a bigger school. And I think I would really like to go to that school. Yeah. I would have loved to learn to that school, just like there's a lot of people to learn. Yeah, I would have liked to go. I would have liked to go to that school because I have tons of friends from Eden, and it would have been fun to be in the new school.
Go ahead,
I'm not sure if I'm allowed to ask it, but do any of you guys have a preference or favorite of the names?
I really like all the names because they really all bring together like the community and really show like coming together of both schools and all that stuff.
Yeah, I like them all. We specifically chose these 10 out of all of them because we all agreed on them. We all liked all the 10 names that we chose. I think they're all good. Yeah, they're all really good names that everybody's chosen.
And you get to whittle it down to 4, which is really good from our perspective.
We think we want, and we think the great support is giving more in school. One time about the process of working with kids.
Well, anyone here probably knows that I've been advocating for a long time for a new building in East Gloucester, so I'm just excited that I get to get in there before I retire.
We'll go to the plans.
So I loved working with the kids. I think they did a wonderful job, but especially doing the research for each one of these slides. They really put time into it, researched it, they researched the images, and they did less in fact checking, which is great. So I'm excited about being able to work into a new school.
Yeah, I loved working with these guys. They're all good workers, they're fun, self-starters. They did good work. We didn't have to do too much.
And they all jumped right in, they were great workers.
Is that the next steps? Unless any more questions?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much.
So just on the next steps, I'm going to share my screen here. How this works. Oops. Great. So just a bunch of work to have from here. things, we're gonna go public tonight actually, and folks saw it in Washington Daily Times, there's an article leading in tonight's meeting announcement. So, tonight's recording will be linked from our main website, which is part of the building, our website, for the new school building. We'll also post on social media so folks know when it's available. We'll get input, as many people want to give input as possible, with the online forum, through the party website, through email, that sort of thing. Just like we did in terms of outreach, committee and nominations. So the group will also then on September 13th at East Gloucester School do a presentation of the names, so folks can come in person if they like to see the students speak about the names. The whole crew will be there that night, we hope. And then also give input that as well, discuss things with students as well. Also, so that'll be nice night being in person. That's at East Gloucester School Auditorium, 6:30 p.m. Not sure again, technically broadcast via Zoom, but we'll see if we can do that. And then the committee, the students will take all the input they get about the 10 semifinalists and do some tough work to narrow it down to 3 or 4 things. But they're going to be bringing September 28th up to 4 finalist names to the school. For then you folks to take, the school committee then take those names and get public input on that again, 4 finalists, and then school committee makes the final decisions. Before it gets to school committee, you get a lot of input from community members, students, and staff. They want to. These guys will do a great job of bringing about all that input. And 3 or 4 names. Questions about the next steps, the process? So, thank you so much, students and staff support as well. Did a lot of work so far, and it's going to wrap up a little bit here, but I know we have to pass and really move forward.
And there was a lot of anticipation for tonight. This is no one to let anything out. So
Yes,
so
we
we
see
get
that.
it all brand new to us. We're really excited to hear that.
Thank you for keeping me quiet. That's a difficult thing.
Yeah. That's true. Thank you for your time so far, and thank you for.
That's just on paper. I'm going to go over to next to the mayor because his backlighting is not good.
The superintendent's report with an update on the return to school.
All right. All right, so as folks might expect, there is a lot going on. We'll cover a bunch of categories here. Things are getting pretty exciting, as they do in the school. And some hectic like always happens. But before I sort of zoom through a lot of news and information about just what we're doing here for school and a lot of activity, I wanted to just stop and start by recognizing how much work is going on behind the scenes. Now to make sure we have a great first week of school. There's always a lot happening as we get to the opening of the school. This year is a little different. But we are supporting among many things. Okay, we are supporting new staff with training all week. And thank you to Greg Bach, our university math coaches, and many others for organizing that, our HR team. Hiring is always happening up until school starts. It happens every year. It's happened that's like the same way this year too. So thank you to our hiring teams, to our principals and staff. Thank you to Katie Provo, our special education director, for supporting our principals with hiring decisions. With many hiring decisions. Thank you to our human resources team for onboarding people, getting the paperwork straightened out, and doing all things to make sure they're have a warm welcome into our schools. Our food service team is rolling along. They're taking food orders, setting up kitchens. Our transportation staff is busy figuring out routes and learning their new routes. Communicating with families. We'll hear more about that later tonight. And then there's always the last minute blitz of school registrations, which are coming fast and furious, like they always do this time of year. So thank you to Chris Castle and Augustine Parsons, who are in charge of our enrollment registration, and then also all our school secretaries, who play a really significant role in getting our families ready to start, new students ready to start school. So, and then last but not least is our DPW and custodial staff. So as folks come to tonight, during the summertime, DPW has done a great job, leading the effort to repair and renovate the modulars, but also just all their work with repairs and maintenance, with cleaning, moves. We'll continue to work right through the weekend and in the next week, making sure our schools are already open. So I can go on and on. There's so many folks working, teachers behind the scenes, or in classrooms, or at home, or wherever they might be on the beach, preparing and thinking, getting ready mentally, but also resources and materials, getting all set to start. Paraprofessionals learning about their new jobs, or students maybe working with. So there's just so many folks out there who are, they may not be in our schools necessarily, but they're doing so much work getting ready for next week. So I just want to really make sure to acknowledge the fantastic work the team's doing. So let me jump in on some of the details here and share with the community and folks watching and the school committee just some of the things we're doing. So let me just share this presentation. So Everyday Matters in Gloucester Public Schools, as we know, there's some nice photos from last year. We'll be adding photos from this year as it gets going. Tonight, we already talked about the naming of the Veterans East Gloucester School, Consolidated School. My superintendent's report tonight is going to cover a pretty good amount of information, COVID protocols for an upcoming school year. There'll be a school handbook update. Some of our principals will help you understand some of the very limited changes. Talk a little bit about school safety, emergency preparedness, summer professional development and training, and then transportation readiness as well. So just in terms of COVID protocols, the headlines. So here are a few headlines in terms of the top line pieces for folks to remember. One, as we did so well last year, and even better the first year of COVID, 2020, 2021, daily hygiene practices will keep us healthy. We really need to reemphasize that in a very strong way. I'll talk more about all these in a moment. We continue, as we have since 2020, to follow the Department of Public Health and DESE guidelines. We'll stick with that. It serves us very well. We'll continue that. Just so people are thinking about this, but COVID continues to be dangerous. We know that. But the vaccinations available to all students and all staff, available remedies available like they weren't last year, less severity in terms of the types that are going around. We are moving, when I say we, our society is moving toward more of an endemic stage of it rather than the pandemic. That results in a number of things. One, state guidance has significantly reduced protocols and practices, including on masks. Masks will only be required for those returning to having COVID. I'll explain that more in a moment. And then COVID vaccinations will still continue to support and encourage all staff, students, and families to get vaccinated. It's of course their personal choice. But we do know that vaccinations help reduce the severity of COVID for all people. So just to go into detail on all these, daily hygiene continues to be the most important aspect of trying to limit transference of germs in any organization, but especially schools. That includes hand washing, sanitizing, covering the mouth and nose when you cough and sneeze. This is basic, just basic hygiene, but always good to remind folks. Hand washing, sanitizing, some more of that, and then staying home when you're sick, of course, okay? And then also some more hand washing, sanitizing. So that's actually, and all our sanitizing stations are still operable in all our schools and are refreshed and reloaded when they need to be. But we can just keep on reminding folks, even just that would be helpful.
I think the fourth bullet is more worth.
That's also important.
Emphasizing.
And that's a hard one, it's a hard one. We've always, in our society, largely, we try to keep on going. Even if you feel sniffles or feel cold, that sort of thing. But even if folks do come in when they have feel a little bit sick or stuff, that's also a great time to wear a mask, and help protect other people, So we'll talk more about that in a moment, but I want to make sure folks are thinking about hand washing sanitizer. So quarantine isolation, so this is significantly different than the past couple of years, and really quite similar to what we were doing at the end of last year. So folks think of that. But if folks test positive, so students and staff test positive, which is the same as it was at the end of last year, must be out of school or work for at least 5 days. Folks may return after 5 days if they have no symptoms, or if those symptoms are resolving and they've been fever-free for more than 24 hours. Okay. What's really important, the only place where we're going to have folks, they must wear masks is when they return from having COVID. And that's aligned with the state guidance. That's through day 10. And we'll have these posted, and our nurses and principals and folks are always there to help clarify for your staff or families. But day 0 is the day that you either start having symptoms or you test positive. We start counting day 0 that first day, then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Folks come back after day 5, so on day 6, they can unmask after day 10 on day 11. So that's really good. In terms of other exposure to COVID, we won't be quarantining or isolating with close contacts. If you have no symptoms, if you've been exposed, for example, at home, a family member has COVID, if you have no symptoms, you may continue to come to school or work. You're encouraged to wear a mask, if that's the case. Folks will know their family situations better than we will, but folks are encouraged to wear a mask if they know they have some exposure to COVID. And the Department of Public Health recommends, and we're recommending, make sure people know that the recommendation is to self-test on day 6. Folks can self-test regularly, even more than that if they like, but in terms of the incubation period, day 6 is the recommendation. We stopped our contact tracing in February, and that'll stay as it is. We won't, as we had in the past for about a year and a half, the contact tracing team just telling people who they've been exposed to. That stopped in February and isn't anymore needed. We pause there. That's a bunch of important information. We just want to give the committee a chance to either ask questions or discuss that.
All right.
So just a question about bullet 4 under quarantine isolation must wear a high quality mask at day 10. So 2 parts. I thought we had a discussion last year which said that we couldn't enforce that because of privacy issues, right? So if someone's home and they come back, how do we regulate? I thought we had that precise conversation last year.
Sure, and we did, and we still went forward with that. So that's the real clear guidance that folks must do it, and we're clearly communicate that. And we'll have our nurses help as much as possible to make sure people understand their timelines. Okay, so we're tested positive on March 10th. That means that you're going to go back to school on March 16th, right? Please know that you should wear a mask until the state. It's not necessarily forcible in the sense we're not going to know keep track of everyone who needs to, but so it really is an honor system. But the clear communication will be there, the clear expectation will be there, and keep on training.
And that's a rule, that's not a recommendation.
Yeah.
And the second part of that is high quality mask.
Yeah, so that's sort of has been our policy guidelines since the beginning. So we had masks available last year, the KN95, right number. And so we still have those available for schools to hand out to students and staff. So we have thousands of those still available. So folks will bring out a lot of masks and
But we're not questioning the choice of mask, I guess.
No, we'll remind folks, if folks are wearing, in many ways here, if folks are wearing a mask, they're making the choice to wear a mask, meaning most likely they'll be good. So I don't think that is or my folks, that's very well,
Or educate folks.
Yeah, you get folks on, yeah, it's not gonna be, we're not coming down hard on everybody, we're not keeping track of what you wear a mask, but you, we're gonna educate them, support them, and, folks will do the best.
Question on the first part of your report, before the.
Yeah.
You mentioned we're hiring right up to the first day of school.
Yeah.
What do we have for vacancies now? I know we're still bus driver issues. Any other major vacancies still?
Paraprofessionals are a primary challenge, not quite as good as other years, but not, not terrible. We're hiring more folks every day. There's no, significant teacher out shortages. The training department, we'll hear from Lori a little bit later in terms of that. But it's a challenge across the country. But I will say this, I think we were all more concerned about 2 weeks ago. And our hiring teams have really done a tremendous job for teacher vacancies, a very limited number of teacher vacancies at this point, there were more last year. And then paraprofessionals, we always are working up to the last minute on that. And things we have folks who are being really every day. So again, it's not perfect, not too far, not where we are now, not too far different from past years, okay? But it's been a struggle again, more struggle in the past.
So for the people out there who might be interested in working, paraprofessionals or bus drivers, where should they go?
Oh, so go to our website and you should see our links to go to our human resource department, sort of thing. You can call our energy department, you can call my number, it just tells what you're interested in, we'll get you to people. You can go to our HR website, lots of different avenues, and people to our social media as well. But, I think paraprofessionals are definitely a need, always are a need. We have a lot more interest in transportation positions, bus driving, a lot more interest in food service workers than we have recently. So in many ways, it's been better at hiring people, but still, this can be great candidates. All right, thank you.
And to follow up, I'm really glad we were able to, make progress in our contracts for the pay. That hopefully it's attracting more people.
Thank you, that's thank you. Very helpful. Move on to
One more thing, vaccinations are not mandated for new hires, or are they?
No, they're not.
Okay.
Yeah, they're not at this point.
That's changed.
Well, last year, the policy that was in effect was that vaccinations were required for all staff. So at this point, obviously we have some new staff, but we're not requiring them. I'm not recommending that we require that at this point. Yeah.
Okay.
Happy to consider that if the committee wants to consider that. I'm just not recommending at this point.
Do we have to do anything to change that policy? I think it was, I don't even recall who voted on that. We all agreed that that was good.
That's a great question. We'll review it and then need to on the agenda next week. Yeah, but that's important for us to, yeah, thank you.
Was it from Desi?
No, that was our decision.
That's right. Okay, move on. So masks and face coverings. Sort of covered some of this already, but that student staff who returned from COVID was wear a mask or face covering through the 10th day. And our health offices, just like last year, towards the end of the year, masks were required in all health offices. We will encourage anyone in our school buildings to wear masks. Who, first of all, who wants? Anybody wants to, for whatever reason, to protect themselves or others. We always want to encourage that. It's a wise choice for many reasons. It's a choice that other cultures have been much more common than our own here in this country, in Massachusetts. But that's also goes for anyone who has cold symptoms. They're welcome to wear a mask. That always can reduce transmission of things like flu and other things, all sorts of viruses and sort of thing. And so, and then also, of course, as I said before, if you know you've had exposure to someone who's COVID, if you're outside of school, the state guidelines are encouraging, supporting those folks who wear masks, choose to wear masks. That is a choice at that point. It's a healthy choice. Of course, we support you in these issues. Testing, so as you know, we had a very robust testing program in our schools and also making tests available for all our staff and students who wanted them. That was a state-supported program, a state-funded program. The state gave us notice last May that they would end that for this fall, and we have. So we will not be holding any testing programs in school or, any in-school testing programs. And really, I think the rationale, I don't want to speak for the state here in terms of that, but this point, rapid tests are much more widely available than they ever have been, much more widely available than they were a year ago, much more commonly used. There are a number of avenues for getting free or expensive tests, either at-home tests or even at their main parking lot. The Gloucester Health Department continues to have a free COVID testing site, pretty much 6 days a week, I believe. That'll continue. And then they're available through health insurance plans and service pharmacy. So they're readily available. We will make tests available for any families in need. So we do still have a supply of at least hundreds of tests. We use those for those students who are staff who develop symptoms during the school day. Not in the first hour. We want to be the testing site. We can't be the testing site for folks, but if folks are sick in the first hour of school, send them home. And if folks do develop symptoms after that and come down, we'll give them an at-home test and they go home. And they'll do that at home, basically. But at least we'll send them off with 2 tests that they can use to make sure that they're figure out. Question about that? Yeah.
I'm just curious if there's a way for us to either on our website or just something to send home, sort of a step-by-step process on how to request free tests through health insurance, even through just CVS. I've found that that's really hard to navigate. You have to go to like the second page to find where you would do it. So I don't know if that would just be helpful for families because it is a great free 8 tests per person in your household.
Right. The federal government through COVID.org is also just for another round of 16 free tests and free packets. So there's also that insurance on that.
Yeah.
I think it always makes sense to help our families navigate these complicated processes.
Yeah. Is there anywhere that says which ones cover?
I know of some people whose insurance hasn't.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a federal department, but
Yeah, because it doesn't say like.
no, it doesn't say. There's not much information. And yeah.
Can you clarify this, not in the first hour if somebody comes down with symptoms at school?
Yeah, so what we want, we do not want to encourage folks to come to school if they know the kids, send their kids to school
Just to get a test.
Just to get a test. Yeah, so it seems like, just don't want to encourage that. We had some of that last year and we just want to make that sort of that call. Happy to supply tests to folks who come down, notice they're in school day, give them a box of which you text them, and they don't do that, but we don't want to. So the school-related cases increased a lot like we did at the end of last year. The report reported to the school committee and community about a few times. We had some increase in cases among specific groups of kids or a classroom or a specific school. Our nurses will continue to track all COVID cases that are reported to them. That's different, of course, last year and prior before that, beginning last year, a lot of cases were, through the statewide database and we're learning of those. That's shifted, obviously. But as folks tell us about what they're reporting, we typically do hear, and folks, families do tell us why their children are out sick. And so we'll continue to track the case that are reported to us. If we notice increases in a specific group of kids, a sport, club, grade, a class, a school, we'll do just as we did last year. We'll see if there are patterns there for families, we'll provide rapid tests, that sort of stuff. We also have the ability. The SC Rapid Response Help Center on COVID is still up and running. We work with them, and also as we did last year with the Gloucester Department of Health, what necessary for the State Department of Health. So, but that's very similar last year, but we still, know that it's not done with us, and it's likely that there will be an increase in cases as we go along. So Vaccinations, as I mentioned before, really fully encouraging vaccinations and boosters to help lessen the impact of communicable diseases. That's COVID, but also flu and other vaccinations. So COVID vaccinations, we know significantly reduce the severity of symptoms and protect against the worst illness and of course death. So really important for folks to get vaccines. Flu vaccines, we know help prevent the contraction of flu and also therefore lessen transmission of school. So we're going to work with the Gloucester Department of Health and the Mass Department of Health to put together probably 2 COVID vaccination clinics, especially there'll be new boosters coming out and trying to use those when they're available. Those will probably happen in 2 schools after school hours, so folks can get there specifically for families and staff in Washington schools. Dates to be determined, and then also as we have every year for many years, we'll continue to have in-school flu shots. And the facilities continue the great work that we started a few years ago, making sure that our facility that there is regular maintenance and upkeep of our ventilation filtration systems. Continue the ongoing process this summer of replacing HVAC filters and also water filters in our buildings. That happens twice a year. The air purifiers that were added to classrooms and office spaces last year are still in place. Those filters change twice a year. They change in spring, they change in fall. And of course, always encourage staff to open windows when they can. And windows on buses will be open as feasible. That will be, so we're going to keep ventilation as best we can. I think that's it for the.
Double.
Yeah.
Excellent. Southfield Police Station. Sorry about that. I'll give it to you twice. It's right. I'm ready to move on to school emergency preparedness.
Did you skip over the school campus updates?
Oh no, that'll be right after.
Oh.
Just quickly, 2 different things we do every year, and one new thing. So again, this summer we have our annual readiness meeting with the chiefs of police and fire chief to discuss pressing issues and get updates. One thing we learned is that the protocols and practices that we're been using in Gloucester and the Gloucester Police Department, Fire Department that we're using with us are now being adopted statewide, and so specifically, Chief Connolly was very pleased that there's going to be some real consistency in terms of some of the basic procedures and practices they use in responding to emergency incidents. On that, not too much news for them, but we always discuss emergency plans, evacuations, that sort of thing in that meeting, and so again, the same way. The principals were involved, Mr. Bach was involved in that, our CFO was involved, just so we understand some of the things that they do about and answer the questions they have, and follow up with any information back.
Just wanted, those are discussions that are not public.
That is right.
Because people, after the horrible things we see in the news, people's first reaction is, we need a report, a report before the city council or some other body about we're obviously not going to tell people what we do and what our plans are. So just sort of reminded the public.
Yeah.
Don't hold your breath for that. Some things are better kept secret.
Yeah, and we like I did last spring, the school committee and the public is giving you an update of the drills we do, just as I'm doing right now. But if that's we keep it on the surface level, just like tonight, and so you're exactly right. So that's something we want to go into detail and let people know. But we do want to make sure that our staff and students are well prepared. One of the biggest things in talking to Mike Gosselin when he met with our school leaders just last week was, want to make sure folks that are well enough trained and understand what to do in the situation. So there's flight, there's also freeze. And freeze is the thing we want to make sure people need to have them, respond well, be thinking, be active, respond to the situation at hand. And only can do that if you can drill them and practice. So in terms of those trainings this year, we met with Michael Gosselin, who's in charge of this for the city, for the police department. Again, every summer with a whole leadership team last week, and discussed the updates and intruder training protocols. There actually aren't many recent updates. in terms of how that's done, but those do adjust from, over time, so we always want to check. We planned some small modifications based on how things went last year to our intruder drills. We're gonna have 2 developmentally appropriate drills in each school this year. One of those being scheduled basically. So those drills really differ, depending what sort of elementary or high school. They're more complicated to go up, also more clear. We want to make sure people know what to do, staff and students know what to do if necessary. But we are also very conscious of just folks' reactions to that, the possibility of danger in our schools. So make sure that that's handled very well, very sensitively for students, definitely, but also for staff.
Questions? So the one thing that we don't keep a secret is parents are notified before these occur. Correct?
Elementary schools.
Elementary schools. Okay.
Right? Am I saying that right?
We tell them,
Oh, after.
like that day, that it's complete.
So how does somebody opt out of one of these then if we're not notifying parents? Like if they don't want their student, their kindergartner to do this?
I think what makes sense is the first is a phone call to principal to learn more about it. Okay. Because when I say we're very sensitive to the developmental age and especially students and what might be cause anxiety is so that's part of the way to design. But it's absolutely okay for a parent to call a principal or a teacher and ask more about them, and then we can get either principal or a counselor to talk that through.
I seem to remember getting an email that there was going to be a drill at one point, so I'm just curious if that's consistent across the board in elementary schools.
The first year we did it, we did send out emails, but we haven't sent. The emails come out after it's complete. First year we had parent forums. I personally had one parent show up to the parent forum, and it was the same parent that I had a meeting with 2 days before to prepare for them. So there wasn't a huge need for it. If there is, we can reconsider doing that. But I know principals are very welcome to sit down with parents. At the elementary level, it is very purposefully not scary, and it's very routine. I have done it every year for several years now, and we don't have students panicking, and it's very important actually. So I would encourage any parent who needs, has a little worry, to reach out to the principal and have a meeting and kind of talk it through.
To follow on that, so do principals communicate that these drills
open house.
at the beginning? You do.
Meet the teacher night, we talk about safety, and that it's one of the drills. We have fire drills, we have we call them offsite evacuations at the elementary school. We don't call them shoot.
Right. Yeah, because my recall is when in middle school, I know some people opted out. I thought that was similar at high school, that somehow people.
Sure. So we as India said that like we teach we tell people that we do these drills. So we don't tell them when they're going to happen.
Right.
And then also there's some work with, especially at high school, work with students about preparing them.
Right.
So through those processes is when it might come up and that's what happens. But we don't tell them when they're. Right. I understand your question.
Yeah. Okay.
And the staff don't even know. Like that, they know it has to happen by a certain date, but I don't announce to my staff when it's going to happen, because like a fire drill, you're supposed to be ready.
Sure. Okay, that makes sense. Okay. My second question is, are we still having disciplinary action for front doors? Okay.
Yeah.
Disciplinary action for prompt doors. Last year, after the Uvalde shooting, it was clearly articulated in an email by the superintendent that if doors are propped, there will be disciplinary action.
And that's for anyone, if as needed order that, and probably remind folks because it's new. You can do it again last year. You know, and that also goes for folks who, you know, not only for profit or open, you know, and that, you know, people do that for lots of reasons, ease of entrance. And, you know, also, if you see one, and you don't unprofit. So that's this summer. I saw a door profit open. I went there and there was staff right there, you know, so you know, as they're supposed to be. But I thought to myself, I don't have to do something about this. And I'm not saying, one not saying a good example, but also following through on what I'm the director I gave. So I went over there, but there was a staff member, why did you work inside? I couldn't see it outside. Just making sure that was, you know,
Just a question on that, because I'm sometimes in schools too. So if a staff member is there next to the prop door, that's okay.
yeah.
So you just can't leave, you just can't prop open the door and leave there. Okay, that's
You're essentially there at the door and.
an important
Yes.
distinction.
And we made that clear with our staff and our principals and that's how.
Just one quick follow-up. I've had a number of parents say that they've seen prop doors. It's appropriate for a parent to remove a prop door as well.
I'm going to that, that probably makes sense, but they should also they should also tell the kids.
Because I've had people ask, and I don't really know the answers to them, but.
I would say close the door and let the principal know.
Yeah.
If you close the door, you address the immediate need, but then the principal needs to know the follow-up.
Thank you.
I did, oh, sorry. Training for the staff, does that take place prior to the school year? I mean, what's involved in that, I guess?
You mean it's private guy, the drills?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, maybe if you want to speak to that.
So in the past, we've had Lieutenant Gosson come to the school and do a demonstration. At this point, at the elementary level, because it's not as involved as the middle and high school evacuations, the principals have kind of taken over that training every year in consultation with Lieutenant Gosson. And so we do that early in the fall because the drill will happen by a certain date. So all staff will be trained prior every year. And then I believe at the middle and high, Lieutenant Gosson has a little more in it because there's more detail and it's a really more complicated than just an offsite evaluation.
I mean, and then also typically, for the ones I was involved last year, I went to speaking meeting after that to debrief, you know, with Gosson. And when we do these, other police officers come as well to, you know, to either play roles or observe.
Yeah.
And tell them.
Each drill, Lieutenant Gosson is there with other police officers, and they debrief at all levels of how to plan. One year we got, because we were too orderly, we were walking too slowly, we need to speed it up. So he gives feedback every year and we adjust.
And then part of that also, that process is in the meeting with our new team that happened last week, you know, and revisit again. So it's a cycle. The last piece on this is, you know, ongoing work that we did some last year, and now we're going to start next level on threat assessment. So assessing, and this means assessing sort of internal threats and risks to students, and sort of analyzing whether or not to what level we need to be concerned about possible threats. These are known things. These are maybe students are having difficulty on levels, that sort of thing. That'd be family members. But that school threat assessment is we're going to be involved in training that the Rockport Police Department is organizing, and that Rochester Police Department and about 25 of our school staff members and leaders will participate in both online and it's both asynchronous and synchronous. It's all virtual, but also participating in 29 other districts. So it's very well known. All right, I skipped over handbooks earlier, sorry about that, for those who were waiting. But I get a need from Greg Bach. Greg, can I hand this over to you to lead and I can show things or how do you want to? I know we have James Cook, we have Amy Pasquarello here, we have Lynn Beatty.
Second, please, I told James and Lynn, I'd give them a heads up if the out of order got me.
Do you want to start?
Let's start with elementary.
Start with the elementary then. Any slides in?
There are not slides.
Okay.
So the elementary handbook is almost the same as last year. The two major changes is one, the COVID protocol change, which Superintendent has just expertly outlined for you. And then the other is the attendance policy change, which I know you approved the attendance policy. I'm happy to give a synopsis if you want, but it's basically taking what's been traditionally a punitive process to more of working with families and encouraging them to be in school. We're no longer looking at 5 days, 10 days, 15 days in letters. We're looking more at percentages. So for example, a student who misses the first 3 days out of 10, the percentage is much higher and they're on track to be chronically absent. So rather than waiting for that student to get to the 5th day for the first letter, we're going to interact with that family sooner and be more proactive to try to get them to be more attentive, to improve their attendance. So the only real change to the handbook are those two things. Other than just dates and periods.
So I was particularly attentive to the attendance section, and it's all out of whack, just spacing wise.
The format.
The formatting is really off, and so it's really hard to follow.
Can you do me a favor? Would you mind opening up the PDF that you sent here? And we can display it on the screen. We can fix the formatting, but I just sent Ben the format that we completed.
Oh.
And maybe, I'm not sure we have to want to cut to the
We
end.
get one in our packet.
You know,
Would you like-
packet one at a time on stuff.
Okay, would you like me to give you a quick spin through that, a quick overview, just a couple highlights of that policy, which is now consistent K through 8, and then has some modifications, but uses it as a base for high school. Okay. There we go.
So this is what it should look like.
Right.
I'm just going to spin through it quickly so you see nicely formatted.
Right, it didn't
And
work.
particularly the colors here, which are very exciting,
Oh, and the graph.
right?
Okay. I can, do you want to?
Well, the graph, when you go scroll down to the, right there. So that color coding goes, it matches Kinvo, which is a communication tool that we use to reach out to families, and we can send home like an attendance report card. And it will show where each individual student falls on that. So if they've only missed 1% of school, they're going to get a report card that says they're in the green and their attendance is satisfactory. But let's say we're on day 15 and they've already missed 3 or 4 days, they're going to be already in that orange or red. And it's a sign, it's a communication tool to show the parents that attendance is starting to become an issue. We need to have a communication and kind of see what we can do to help with that. Is this child having a hard time coming to school for anxiety? Maybe they had COVID and had to isolate 5 days. We know that, and then we would approach the situation differently. So we would look at each individual case, but this is a nice warning sign to kind of watch where everyone is.
Can I ask a question before Greg? I know, do you want me to wait?
Sure, go ahead.
Well, it's just, so, like, I'm a huge proponent of this new policy, and I'm just wondering if it's a really different and new approach to attendance, and we're going to talk about that. Are we planning to introduce that at back to school night, the teacher night? Because I think this is all going to require a lot more communication about it. Like, I think this is a great thing, but I think we need to figure out a way to reach parents, all sorts of parents, even the parents who don't come to back to school night and teacher night.
And the other big change is that an absence is an absence. There's not an excused absence, they are just all absences. And that's going to be a piece of communication that I think we're we're going to have to say nonstop every time, every conversation we have about attendance, because it's an old tradition of, well, it's excused. So this is changing the way kind of we work for decades.
And so to your point, or, yes, I agree, there's a lot of communication, there's a lot of communication starting now, then just keep on going. This is a years long process, you know, I think you understand, so, but it'll begin, you know, and also, it'll be done a lot of ways, it'll be done in conversations, as well as back to teacher night, as well as communication with principals that they do every week, that sort of thing, so, but it'll be from a variety of points, but it'll have to be, we'll think of it.
Right, and some hopefully person in that new communications position can help with that. I mean, I think we're just gonna have to be really creative about how we get this message out.
Just one, I know you're, this is just specific to the communicating around the excused and excused absences. My understanding is that they get like doctor's note, is that considered excused?
It's not excused.
No, I'm saying in the past.
In the past, it wasn't necessarily excused either, but parents felt it was, and I've had a lot of conversations kind of having that.
Okay.
Discussion, excuse versus unexcused is a really bad name too, because a normal absence could be something like that, you know.
So what we have outlined in the K through 8 is that there are 4 options where it is, we didn't call it excused, it was exceptional, is that the language we used?
Yeah, I think what it is, maybe I can just walk through it.
Yeah, well, I have a very specific question about how to communicate that. Do you think it's worth communicating that to pediatrician's office? Like
Yes.
giving this
Absolutely.
policy to the pediatrician's office?
Absolutely.
Okay, that's all, that's the point I was trying to get to.
No, so I just wanted to share this because we had a group this summer of elementary and middle school teachers and administrators who met here in this library several times to take the policies that the school committee approved in the final meeting just before school ended, and to turn those into the operational guidelines. So I do want to thank the rather large group that got together this summer. James will probably point out the high school group, I believe that 6 times this summer. They worked really hard on that. The group decided to redesign rather than very dense policy language, which had been the case in the past, to redesign around a little bit more friendly FAQ style with common questions, responsibilities of guardian or parent. And we got right to the key question, number 2, which was, are certain absences excused? And this is going to take a little while to unlearn, but excused, unexcused, as Kathy mentioned, was never really a thing as far as the state is concerned for counting chronic absenteeism, for accountability around attendance. Absent is absent no matter what it is. The one case where it does make a difference is whether somebody is considered truant, but that's a very specific kind of thing that is addressed in Mass General Law. But really what matters for DESE and for us, because every day that's missed is an important day, is that they are absent or present. And what we came up with, which is really important, is that there are 3 kinds of absence designations, as Amy mentioned. One is they're absent, present, and then we use the word absent for exceptional circumstance, and that is for only a very, very few things. And the best way to translate that is, why do we even need that designation if DESE doesn't care if absent is absent? That's something that we treat a little bit differently. So if somebody is absent for a routine visit or medical visit, if they're out sick, one of the key things that parents ask is, well, can they attend the dance tonight? Can they attend the concert tonight? Can they attend the after-school sports? And we recognize, as do most districts, certain key things, which would be religious observance, legal appointment or court appearance, bereavement for an immediate family member, and a severe medical condition that requires hospital care. Those are the most commonly identified items that we would consider an exceptional circumstance, but is an exceptional circumstance where a student could still participate in other activities. All other kinds of things are something where, common questions will come up, child still playing the game this afternoon.
You said religious
Observance.
observances, but I don't see that.
That if you look down at page, under attendance terminology, sorry.
Oh, okay, because in the paragraph
Yeah.
above, it says other things, but not
Okay.
religious, so I don't know if it's
Yeah,
worth
we could,
being
we'll
consistent.
fix that. Good catch, thank you. Then the standard kinds of things, how do we notify the schools at the designated numbers, which each are put in the handbooks? And what if my child is sick? And this was a really important thing that it's very important as school committee members and as people who interact with parents about this question is we don't doubt that your child is sick. We don't doubt that at all. So we're not looking for an excuse, and that's a judgment call, whether we excuse it or not. That's not what we're looking for. We still want to know why your child is out. We want to know whether it's a vacation, whether it's they're sick. We will treat our response is going to be different based on the reason. And so the attendance teams, principals, everybody is going to be looking at absence and why, absence and why. And that's going to be a different kind of conversation and different kind of outreach for different reasons. And that's what matters most. So we still ask for people to call the school, let us know when the child's going to be out and what the reason is. Then we have the attendance terminology. Ben, if you want to kind of scroll down with me.
Can I just make a comment too? It seemed like the color coding also, where it's, 0 to 0, but green is still okay. Like, it's not that we don't expect your kid to be 100% attendance. There are predictable, normal absences for, no one's healthy 180 days every year, right? So those are in the green, and of course we know those are
We followed we get the terminology we covered, and then these are the actions that Amy shared with you. If your child has missed 5 to 9%, she covered the chart, which perfectly matches our Kinvo reporting, which you're going to see and hear a lot more about. And that's where a parent will get a attendance postcard, digital postcard, and it will show where on the scale a child falls. And what I'd like you to take a look at is the next page. Then go a little bit further. I think this is important to pay attention to because in shifting from 5, 10, 15, 20 days to percentage, if we will be identifying students within the first month, because if you miss 2 or 3 days or 4 days in your first 2 weeks of school, you're on track to miss a tremendous amount of days in a year. And that's one of the big shifts. And so we created 2 practical application kind of scales. One is for an example of if you miss these number of days per month, by mid-year, only 90 days into the school year, that translates to, let's say, I'm missing 2 to 3 days a month. Doesn't seem like a lot to a lot of people, but that can be 8 to 17 days and missing almost 4 weeks of school by mid-year is the impact to a child's education is just a tremendous impact. And so this idea that it's just a couple days a month, it's a really big deal. And so it's important for them to understand the trajectory. And we will be responding very early. If somebody by a percentage of days in attendance, so if a report is run after 1 month and somebody has missed 3 days, they will be on that list for outreach. We matched tardiness to attendance. And then there are some routine things about dismissal and vacation, and then links to the policy. In reference to communication, one of the things that the group talked about that we knew we needed to do as soon as we could catch a breath and get some of the other things started is for open houses to have a small group will prepare a common presentation for open house, and a same group or maybe a different group will work on 1 or 2 page infographics for parents that can be emailed out, printed, talked about it as a parent conference, but just as something really user friendly, very visual, and helps understand. So there's going to be a lot of communication with staff members to help them understand, how do I talk about attendance now, and how do I talk about excused, unexcused? And it's going to take a little while to unlearn some past practice.
Just, and you guys are the experts at this, but as from a parent point of view, anything you can send home in folders, like that someone can put on their fridge.
Yeah.
And not have to go to back to school night, not have to look at an email that they got about, just, I know that there were toner issues last year and all sorts of things, but I do think like something in hand as often as possible, is particularly elementary is really, I don't think you can underestimate the significance. It's old school, but it's, I think, to have something a person can look at when they're tired after a long day is a really significant and important part of it.
Any other questions?
I saw the 0.5 thing in the chart you had there, 0.5 days. Does that have to do with tardiness? Because I thought dismissals were counted as absences. Like if I, say, take my son to a doctor's appointment and they had to get out of school like after lunch or something, I thought that wasn't.
An absence, and 0.5 is, 0.5 is, again, it's sort of simply demonstrating.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I just want to make sure I understand the policy enforcement.
But policy is, if somebody is dismissed and they are missing more than 50% of the day, that does count as an absence.
Right, that's what I remember.
Yeah. If they don't, they're being dismissed an hour,
Yeah.
or late hour, an hour early, that counts as present.
Okay.
So we're set for elements, right?
Yeah.
How about if I go to high school, and I can show the slides that James has prepared. I think we do.
Can I just ask one?
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry.
Maybe we can answer so I can set this up. Is that where we're going next? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So there was obviously a lot of pages of a handbook, so I'm not sure where this was, but I did see, it may have been middle school, the face coverings policy was still in there. So I just wanted to figure out what we do with that, since we no longer have face covering.
If I remember correctly, I need to use this face coverings policy is now that we will follow this guidelines.
Right, that's it, I will look back, and that is, it does say we follow the guidelines, and then it gives requirements.
Requirements for
wearing masks, which don't reflect the new requirements.
Yeah, so what we'll do is before these are final PDFs are available electronically. That's good, thank you. We'll review that and make sure that the policy works out, or if we need to adjust the policy next week. we'll also do that. So James Cook, you there and available?
I'm here, ready to go.
Okay, let me share your slides.
Thank you. Prepared a couple slides here, I think 3 slides to show the changes in the handbook. So the first slide refers after the title slide refers to what the you've already gone over the new attendance policy.
It's hard to hear, so now speak now, see if we got this louder, James.
Okay, can you hear me?
It's a lot louder. Not too loud. No, we're adjusting, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Am I on the right slide?
Yes, that's perfect. Thank you.
Thanks, James.
So our attendance policy echoes the K-8 policy that you just saw, with a few operational differences. So we've included at the high school level, operationally, the phone numbers, exactly who you're calling, the personnel involved in that call, and the times of day we're expecting the information about student absences. So we have that level of detail. That's one difference. Another difference is extracurricular eligibility, consistent with past practices. So we do have a rule in the high school that we maintain about needing to arrive in class by 7:30 a.m. In order to participate in extracurricular activities on any given day. So that is in our policy, but not at the other levels. We also, in those extraordinary absences, we want to make sure that that students who are ill on and can't attend school are also not participating in extracurricular activities. So we made that that slight distinction, but still, if you're religious observance, in a kind of appointment, a court appointment. We do have a lot of students who are involved in different kinds of court appointments every now and again, that sort of thing. They are allowed to participate in extracurricular activities. Our policy also includes language where we encourage them to get back to school on a day they have an appointment. They come, they have the appointment, they come back to school and then participate in extracurriculars. If the timing is such they can't come back, then that's documented and approved by the assistant principal or principal that they can participate that day in extracurriculars, even though they didn't have an opportunity to come back to school. Folks sometimes take liberties with that. Also, college visits was something we added to the high school policy as an extraordinary absence, that it also allows folks to participate in extracurriculars. That was different than the K-8 level. Sorry, Ben, I just wanted to say we have makeup work timelines in our policy as well, for makeup expectations for fewer than 10 days and then 10 or more days. So we make distinctions in the makeup work timelines to empower students and their families and teachers to collaborate on making sure that the makeup work gets done, since at the high school level you're working for credit in courses. That's really important that we include that. And then we have a specific Gloucester High School communication expectations for reaching that. You saw the yellow, orange, and red level on the K-8 policy. There's specific high school specific, what happens when you're at risk, what happens when you're chronically absent, and what happens when you're severely chronically absent, what kind of communication happens. So we've laid that out, that's specific for the high school, but it's very much in the spirit of what's at the other levels, just grade level appropriate. So that's it. That's the attendance, our wrinkles on the attendance policy. In our handbook, I made, after consulting lots of folks, made an adjustment to graduation requirement to reduce the number of computer technology courses required from 2 semesters or 5 credits to 1 semester. And the reason for this is the opposite of what you might think. We're not actually lessening the amount of computer technology students have. What's actually happened is we have computer technology that is content specific in nearly every course in the school. It's one of the things that's just happened. It's, so what does that look like in a biology class is different than what that looks like in an English class and what that looks like in a vocational class, but all the classes are really deeply teach students about computer technology in the discipline they're working in the class. So by reducing from 5 credits to 2.5, we're able to save us from this ever-growing list we have of courses that count towards the computer tech requirement, and reduces the amount of accounting that especially families and counselors are doing to make sure students stay on track for graduation. It's a one less widget to keep track of, and then test it against the more than a dozen classes that account for that requirement is really what it's for. So it's part of kind of honing and simplifying and focusing, because tech is throughout our school. It's one of the things we've definitely seen grow through the COVID difficulties. So that's that small adjustment. And then I just wanted to, these are mostly just information and operations cleanup issues, but I wanted to share them with the council. We've included gender neutral pronouns everywhere. We did a search for any place we were saying, she, he, or, him, her, and made sure there was either included or that there replaced the other pronouns. So we're gender inclusive of our gender neutral students. We created gender neutral guidelines for formal game day attire. We do have a policy. We have students dress up for game days, right? Dress formally. And so it was very gendered language, but where we have non-binary students on our teams, it needed to make that language gender neutral. So we did that. It's pretty easy to do. We've included guardians along with parents everywhere in the handbook. So every time it says parents, we're also saying, and guardians. The next thing is, I don't know if you all have been to graduation, so you know that we honor in our on graduation, we note the students who have received a 90 or higher, and the students who received a 93 or higher. The language we've used for as long as I've been at GHS is a little confusing, because we refer to those students as honors and highest honors, and folks get that confused with honor roll and highest honor roll. So we're getting rid of the honor and high honor, and we're going with magna cum laude for over 90 and summa cum laude for over 93. And it's fancy Latin, people like that at graduation time. We've made sure that our list of clubs and extracurricular activities will be part of a living document with contact information and times of meetings that lives on our website. It's never accurate in the handbook once the handbook is published, so we're making that part of our living document. That's a real push that we've been working on improving that over the summer. And then that our new handbook includes our new schedule rotation, which is based on the day of the week. So Mondays rotate a certain way, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursday, Friday, as opposed to having a 7-day rotation. All in the spirit of that was by popular request through surveying to simplify the day. Really helps with the transition of folks into our school. And again, it's something people were really looking for after COVID is wherever we can have things be simple. We're trying to go with that. And that's been what we've been asked to do. And we were able to come up with that schedule. That's it.
That's it.
Go ahead, Lauren.
So I may have missed this, it's on the attendance thing, but as I recall, one of, again, like attendance failure, is that what's the word? The policy that we used to have at the high school, or that was changing based on attendance works advice to us.
Yeah.
I may have missed it, but I didn't see that in here.
Because it's not in the policy. Because our policy, sorry, I wanted to simplify. There's a lot that we got rid of. There's a major overhaul, but so what I wanted to do is capture the fact that everything is the same as K-8, except for the slight differences that I mentioned. So the attendance failure policy, the entire old policy is removed, is gone, except for the K-8 policy plus the high school wrinkles. So that's a great question, and I can confirm that, right there, we would be in violation of exactly the policy that the school committee approved, if we were.
That was one of the trickier pieces of this, and so.
Yes, for sure.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
High school, middle school. So Lynn, thank you, James, very much, first of all. I hope you sign off.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any thanks if you want to.
Hello,
Hi,
how is everyone? Doing
Lynn,
okay?
We're using your school,
I know, it's really weird to look at it from this angle, I have to say, I feel like I'm above you somehow.
Enjoying the sunset over the Mill River. Or
It's quite cold in there though, isn't it? I was in there earlier today with a group that was working, or yesterday, excuse me, it was, they all had sweaters on. There are other areas of the building that are uncomfortable in the other direction though, so.
I would have another sweater in my bag.
Okay, Lynn, you don't have anything that you want me to show, do you? Are you gonna summarize?
No, I went old school. James got fancy on me and I didn't know. So I have the sheet that I sent ahead. Hopefully Stephanie sent that to you. So there are just a couple of things. With regard to attendance, I can start there. Our policy is the same in the middle school handbook as the one you just went through with K-5. So that was really important to us in this whole thing that we have a continuum, because there were, as you probably know, some pretty significant differences among the three policies in the old version. So I'm really happy that we're able to have a vertical alignment with this, and the high school has some other things with credit reduction and all that they had to deal with and some other aspects, but our policy is exactly the same as K-5. So it, again, will replace in both the entire policy that was in our handbook on pages 12 and 13 previously. This policy takes that place. I did make one change to an acceptable dress. We had added a section on face coverings that talked about the mandate for everyone and the requirement to wear face coverings or masks in school, and the requirements of what the mask needed to do. Like I put this together last week, so updated it to a simple statement that says face coverings, all individuals have the option to wear face coverings or masks when in school, on school grounds, and on school transportation. So that takes the section, you can see where it says former, that will come out and it will be replaced by that one sentence I just read. The larger changes that I made, which aren't large at all compared to the work that I'd like to do this year with students to help make our handbook more accessible to kids in terms of readability, friendliness of language, and having them have a say in the kinds of information and rules that we present in our handbook. But this year I took a little bit of slicing and dicing to the conduct and progressive discipline section. I for quite a while have felt, and the assistant principals as well have felt, that it was so dense and very difficult to read, a lot of redundancies. So the core messages that I wanted to get across is that, first, we want our students to strive for positive conduct guidelines. We want them to be respectful. We want them to know what it is we expect them to do every day and to conduct themselves as citizens. So there's a short introduction that, talks about, and some of the language is similar to the past version, that we do want to create a safe, nurturing environment, and that our sales values play a part in how we approach our community, etc. And then the conduct expectations is a bullet list that is all terms. Some of these statements were here as written now. Others were, you know, don't, never, that kind of start. So we, with the assistant principals, we went through and changed. So the language all starts with positive. This is what we want you to do. We're not giving you a list of what we don't want you to do, because that comes later on in the handbook when we talk about infractions. So that's that first part. And then following that, there was a long narrative, progressive discipline in O'Malley, that this is the part we felt was really redundant and hard to get through. So I shortened it up with the 3 messages. You know, we expect kids to come to school to learn. Anything that disrupts the environment can't be tolerated, because then people can't learn. And then that, you know, it's very important that everything we do is a learning experience. So while we know that kids are going to make mistakes, we, you know, and they're held accountable for those actions when they impact the community. We want all of this to be a learning experience. So that's the essence of what's here, in a much shorter form than it was in the previous versions. I also included the piece that I added last year, with the fact that we've added the PACE program, Positive Alternatives and Consequences Education Program. So I think this pretty succinctly says these are the 3 important things about, you know, how we do this discipline thing at O'Malley. Then you can scroll through, you can see how much longer the section was in the old handbook. So it continues. This is still from the old handbook in this same section. It's 3 pages, I think. And then this next, if you stop here, Ben, this is the next section just below, is on page 23, is there's a section called Typical Consequences for Infractions, and it's followed by 3 charts, so levels of infractions and what they look like. That's one of the biggest things that I want to put in students' hands this year, to talk to them about the language that's there, to make sure it's comprehensible to them and it relates to the kinds of things they see and want to avoid and they need to understand in their daily life. So right now that part is pretty much the same, but this is just a short introduction to it. It's not terribly different. And then following down, there were 2 small changes that I made in the charts. I noticed going through, and again, the APs and I sort of reviewed all this, the bullying definition did not include repeated and intentional. So it was not in alignment with the state's definition, the legal definition. It's still not quite exactly that, but adding those 2 pieces, because it's beyond, you know, teasing or name calling. It really has to have that intentional piece, that repeated piece, the power dynamic we talk about, for it to formally be called bullying. And I always hesitate with bullying because I don't want any hurtful behavior. I don't really care much whether it can be defined by the state's definition. We're going to respond to it and we want it stopped regardless. But just to avoid confusion, I felt that the repeated and intentional phrase had to be in there. And then the final change that we made, one of the things we noticed that for some reason, in the level 3 infractions, the statement read, if the student is in possession of knives less than 6 inches and guns, real or look-alike, or other objects readily capable of causing bodily harm. None of us could figure out why it said less than 6 inches. There's nothing on the books, you know, the law, when you talk about felony, is over 3 inches. And we felt like it was really misleading. So I reached out to our attorney to say, hey, do you know why this would be in our handbook? And he had no better the answer than us, and that we could come up with and recommend that we take that number out. So it is out, because any possession of anything like that would be a level 3 infraction. And that's it for this year. Like I said, expect next year when I come back to have a whole different version on this, because I'm going to have kids take a gander at it, and which should be a lot of fun. So.
So thank you, Lynn. I took some notes on a couple things in just sort of in the policies, just to wonder about. One thing I noticed was that the social media policy was last approved in 2012. So I'm sort of thinking that programs should take a look at that policy and see if it needs to be updated. Also, the civil rights coordinator, the high school did a really good job at writing when you were leaving and Amy was coming and all their stuff, but for, in the other document, you're listed there, and Ryan is still listed as the Title IX coordinator.
And this is in the school committee policy manual, right?
This was in the policy manual, in the school, in the policy manual.
Right, yeah, I'm sorry, I want to clear which clip we're talking about, so we can go change.
Handbooks or policy?
I don't know if I was going really
So
quickly.
so the handbooks have a lot of the policy manual in them.
Right,
So-
I didn't know we had the handbook. This, everything is from what was in our packet for this week, so I assume that was all, that's all the handbook. That may have been copied from the policy manual.
Right, but I think your point is a very good one about it. Specifically pointing out a changeover.
Yeah.
Right.
Makes a whole lot of sense, so my name's not on there all year long, and then we change Ryan to Roberta Eason, so thank you.
Right, and then just the last question, Lynn, this is more of you, she's
Yeah,
here she is.
yep.
And this may be too big for this moment, but I know that you've mentioned in meetings the electronic communications situation when, when kids are at school having electronics. So, and we've been, I know one of us sent out articles about these things we've seen, so just to sort of put a bug in that we may want to change that policy, or are we looking at changing, we talked about kids having phones in class and that kind of thing.
Oh, so you're specific to the cell phone policy. Yeah, great. I'm glad you asked that. So we are back to full enforcement of our cell phone policy as written right now. The staff voiced a strong desire to revisit and revise it. When we looked at it, it may actually have everything that we need in it, and it's that enforcement, both at the classroom level and then in the office level, may be, part of what we need to work on. So we're starting with that. I've been communicating with parents and with kids that have come on tours, et cetera, and we'll do the same with staff, that we are back to pre-COVID, where cell phones are off and out of sight when you walk in the building, and that you have two options. You either leave it in your locker all day or you give it to your homeroom teacher. And many of the homeroom teachers have ordered, those shoe pockets that hang on the back of your door so kids could put them in there. And the message that I will be stressing with the community to kids and families is, if you don't like either of those two options, then you need to leave your phone at home. We've got phones all over the building, even after school. There's really no reason to have a phone in the building, although we know people go elsewhere after school, which is why the school committee policy provides for kids to have phones so that they have them after when they need them. But in the building, we're going pretty close to a zero tolerance policy on it, and really trying to encourage them to be put away. And I will be having a similar conversation with staff. And there are members of our staff who have to have their phones on them, student support, admin, because our radios don't work in all places in the buildings, et cetera. But other than that, we want to practice what we preach with the kids and have phones away, across the school community. So hopefully that will encourage kids to move away from them a little bit. I don't expect it to be easy. Kids are very attached to their devices these days. It's a little scary how attached they are. So
Great, that was my basic question, so thank you.
sure.
Lynn, is that just going back to the old policy, or is this a policy revision? Maybe I misunderstood.
This is the policy. This is the policy that's written in the handbook currently. So our charge this year is to make sure that every faculty and staff member is enforcing it equitably. And if that's not working, once we get to that point and we can confidently say, yes, no, people aren't making exceptions, they're not making different rules in their own places, and the kids are really getting a consistent message, then we'll look at the policy for revision after that. But at first, we're starting with recognizing that there are aspects of the policy that haven't been followed consistently among staff, and haven't been enforced the way they need to be. So the policy may be broken, but it may not be. So let's start and make sure that we are, if we're going to take the energy to revise it, do we really need to?
Thank you.
That's it. The last conversation we had about this, we all sort of brought up the idea of the watch situation, the Apple Watches. Where are we at in terms of that in the policy? Do we have anything that specifically says that you may not have your watch on?
There's nothing in our handbook that says anything about, I mean, it's device, but it's based on cell phones. The kinds of issues we're having mostly are related to apps on phones and things like that. Kids aren't taking pictures and posting them on TikTok on their watch. So it's, it will be a concern. It will be part of the conversation. Right now, it's, we haven't changed anything in the policy except addressing it. So that'll be part of what we evaluate though, as well.
Thank you for going back into the old policy.
Just one quick thing. You said you went old school with the change list. Thank you. I really appreciate that itemized list of changes because that makes, as you know, translation, because we have to make sure that we get handbooks translated each year. And if we have to pay thousands of dollars to have an entire handbook translated, where we can pull out language that's changed, have a professional translator and put it back in. So thank you for the old school approach. It's really
That's good to know. Next year, I'm afraid we won't be so fortunate. Well, no, I'm not afraid. I'm hoping, because I'm really hoping that the kids dig into this and that we come up with a document that is really helpful to them as a guideline of how we do school. So.
right. But if it's an entire rewrite, that's a whole different thing.
Yes.
You
Yes.
kind of-
And it will be shorter. So,
And one thing too, unfortunately, Amy Pascal's not here to write this down, I remember, because Greg Fox is leaving, is that we'll do that sort of track with the version that Lynn did. You actually for all of us, just much easier. So thank you, Lynn. That's a way that I think we'll go forward and do that from now on.
sure. Thanks.
So I just wanted to point out one thing as well. In the elementary handbook, at least it talked about send money to schools and debt and things like that. Given that this year we don't have, that thankfully there's funding for that. I don't think you need to change necessarily that handbook, but there definitely needs to be communication that this year we still have.
Pretensions.
That just went out. That just went out.
So it's all, but I think it probably should come out.
Yeah.
Well, part of it has to do with ordering their lunch. So there's pieces of it
Oh, okay.
that they need to use it
Right, that's right.
for logistics.
Of course, you're right. Yeah, that's right. Okay. We'll take a look at it. If there's anything you need to have it for this year, we will, but I said, saying, and then the communications about lunches are free.
Sure, because we did just get, as an elementary parent, we just got an email about that, but it's not, it's a two-step email. You've gotten this email from Gloucester Public Schools, and then you have to click it, which is just, again, like, I didn't click it, because I know what it says, but there's plenty of people who aren't just gonna take, so if we can send an email that actually says, hello, school families, again, this year, thanks to this, school lunches are free. It's just a bullet like at the top so that anybody opening an email can see it.
Can see the message.
Yes, good. Yeah.
Just fun, dancing carrots or something.
Steak tips.
Steak tips. Steak tips. No steak tips, Mr. Melvin.
Okay, any more questions? We good? Okay, so we need a motion to approve the student handbooks with language changes if there are necessary, the items we talked about.
So
So,
Is there a second?
Discussion?
I second it.
Maria, may we have a roll call vote, please?
Mayor Verda,
Yes.
Ms. Watson.
Yes.
Ms. Weason.
Yes.
Chairperson Clancy.
Yes.
Christie Melvin.
Yes.
And Mr. Minio.
Yes.
We're gonna skip the transportation readiness, okay, because Lori has been very patient.
Yep.
And is with us, and she's a very busy person on lots of levels. So let me share this. I'll go through a few things, and then Lori's here to help out by answering any questions folks might have. All right, so a lot of good news. So Lori and Cameron fully launched Ride 360 after pilot last year from COVID. If you remember, that's the app, the app phone and otherwise that families can sign up for, which will give them their routes and their stops, and also a great communication tool for any changes or any types of thing. Over 250 folks signed up already, and we'll keep on communicating more and more and more. So that's good. Hiring is promising, thanks to Lori. She marched in the Forest Parade with a large hiring banner and a yellow bus, right?
Yes.
A yellow bus.
Great.
And then also the banner is located outside of Gloucester Crossing all summer, which anybody who's gone any number of businesses has seen. And that's helped actually put at least 3 people, more than 3 people in our hiring pipeline, maybe I think as many as 5 when we're talking about.
Where we have a promise of in 5 mid-September in training.
Yeah, that's great. Those folks, there's some attrition in terms of, we've experienced attrition, it's not an attrition, my recent experience is that there's some attrition from hiring through, so it's an intensive and extensive and pretty long training process. So it doesn't mean we'll have 5, doesn't mean that all 5 will become drivers, but that is like by about 500% more than we had in this past. So that's really promising. Also a huge credit to Lori and her persistence in all sorts of different areas getting to that. So our routing was completed early in prior years. Thanks to Cameron, and it was a traversal whiz. And then just the last couple of days, there's been, in terms of the bidding, in terms of the routes, which is the process on bus driver selecting routes, we're getting named to routes. And so now that's done as of yesterday, that we can now we're starting the communication about the actual routes, the families, and other information as well. And that's going to go next couple of days through social media, not just website. So they know where to go to get information about where their kids are getting on the bus and at what times. We continue to strengthen our support in connection with kindergarten families. So earlier outreach, I think we outreached in early August to kindergarten families, all of them. So make sure they knew how to sign up, make sure they knew sort of practices around kindergartens riding the bus, make sure they knew the value of riding the bus, that sort of stuff. So we've routed all K students ahead of time. So as they sign up or as they show up, what happens a lot with kindergarten students and families is they plan to take the bus, but they don't sign up, but they show up the first day, drive the kids to school the first day often, but they want to take the bus home either that afternoon or the next day. So by routing all of them, we'll be prepared once someone says, a small person says, I'm taking the bus, and that's the first time. Or they tell them on the screen as well. So if they're already in place, depending on where they live, so that will give us a leg up on just being organized around that. We're using all the same linear for K students. A better side of each bus, so they know where to sit. And then using colors for bus routes instead of numbers. One of the pieces in terms of the communication to K families was just urging them to introduce themselves to the driver, to know the driver, that being a key piece of the whole process. So making progress on that, and we'll continue to work on making it better for our communities.
Just in relation to kindergarten, Laurie, you weren't here last year when I was advocating for this, but I'm gonna continue to just put a plug in for practice days for kindergartners to ride the bus. So like, there's a day where kindergartners can actually get on the bus to practice and know where they're gonna get dropped off. Last year I was a kindergarten parent, and it's hard to explain to your kid where they get dropped off, how to get into the school. I don't know that process, right? And kindergartners go on with all the older kids. They don't go on before, which can be really intimidating. And so I think it would be great if there was a way for kindergartners to have a chance to ride the bus and understand that process before the first day of school, with a whole bunch of first, second, third, fourth, and fifth graders also on the bus. So just as we're thinking of other ideas, I would love to see that
Okay,
happen. As
we
a
can
point.
definitely take that into consideration. You have a plan for that this year?
Yeah, no, I don't.
Although we try to do it kind of kindergarten, that try to push for, can we go around the block and practice? A lot of people dissuade me from that idea.
I think it's more like at each school
That's
to
the
understand,
reason.
yeah,
That's
like to
the
understand how to get off.
It's not a good idea.
Yeah,
try.
it's a whole different culture. Kids have never, I mean, just even not wearing a seatbelt, right? Like that blew my daughter's mind, right? So like that, it's a big change for kindergartners. I think one of the biggest. So I just want to continue to push for that possibility.
Great, I can understand.
So, two things. So I knew that Ride 360 was being piloted last year, but I've heard nothing about how to sign up or where to sign up, other than my work in my school committee. So I wouldn't have even known that it was available.
We are doing better messaging about that.
Yeah.
It's on the transportation page, on there, how to follow and to do so. And it's on all transportation, communication to families on how to do so. And on conversations with families. It's encouraged.
And in the next 40 hours, you will see what's going on. Primarily the folks who are enrolled now, or the folks who started last year, or folks who are new riders this year. That's what we were talking about. Yeah.
So,
You'll see more of this.
so right, so you're saying that the communication is going out tomorrow about bus routes?
Actually, the bus routes were posted today on the website.
So, but again, people have to make a proactive. So here's an example. I'm a parent. I just assume my bus is the same and at the same time.
And we are sending out messaging tomorrow, in email as well on social media, that the transportation routes have been posted to
Okay,
the website.
great,
On the transportation page, and that's, gonna be happening tomorrow.
great. I'm just, sort of, I have the two hats. I'm an elementary parent and
Absolutely.
and then just on the sort of seating on the bus kind of question. So I have a first grader, third grader last year, so now second. So I don't know if I know that the smaller kids are supposed to stay towards the front. I don't know if that's enforced for anyone other than kindergarten, but I know that there are conflicts. You've got fifth grade boys, right? Rough, or, and then second grade shy girls. And it's still scary. So I don't know if we have any other sort of seating things. For like, first kindergarten and first and second are here, or if that's just impossible to maneuver. But it's still a street, it can be a difficult social moment, I guess.
It's really up to the discretion of the driver. If he or she sees a problem, then they will address it and ask the student to sit where they have designated the student to sit and speak to the parent. Kindergartners are
right
to sit up front, and it will be a designated spot, very visible to parents as well as the kindergarten students. They will know where to sit, but it doesn't go by grade.
Okay. And then last question related to that is our bus stops at O'Reilly for music. So what happens is sometimes the bus is incredibly full, right? Like extremely full, and then kids have their instruments.
Correct.
You mean kids are coming from being to the students are.
Right, so the bus gets, which I hear a lot about. And I'm just wondering, like, is that sort of split among between buses, or is that just like one bus that happens to be? Because it
happens to be one bus, one designated bus, that usually takes the band student on their particular day, designated, so they are not split.
I see. So that makes for a very, very crowded bus.
It can, we try and pick the bus with the less number of students, and the quickest time to get them here to only in order to be here. So I don't want to send them
Right.
all around the.
Well, being in for most, the direction, obviously, it makes sense.
We try and get them here as quick as we possibly can. And sometimes it ends up on a bus that has a number of students, and we try, and we are given the numbers, so if we have to adjust, we will adjust that day.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, real quick, Laurie, does the app, right, 360, does it show real time where the bus is? I mean, is there a transponder on the bus that kind of shows?
No, we are not, we do not, that is not what Ride 360 does.
Okay.
Ride 360 provides you your students a child's transportation plan.
Yeah.
It allows us to communicate with you in real time if there's a change in the bus, whether it's running late or has a substitute driver.
Yeah.
It does not allow that.
Yeah, no, I just, the other thing is, we had that come up to kindergarten day or something. And did we have a bus at that? There was, yeah, I thought.
At the kindergarten, countdown in kindergarten?
Yeah.
Yes,
So the kids could go onto the bus and check it out.
yes.
It turned out that a lot of kids want to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
like 10 buses there.
Yeah.
2 years ago, in the middle of COVID, I was like, whoa, there's a lot of kids on this bus.
Last question, it's kind of, it's one that seems to come up to me a lot. Because either I drive by West Parish and I see the line of cars up there. What can we do to promote use of the bus? I mean, is there anything we can do to?
We've never actually talked about that before, though.
I just sometimes, it's amazing. Explain to them how we worked on this.
We're gonna have Nora be the spokesman, my daughter, be the spokesperson for bus riders.
We know.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Go yellow to go green, right? Is that
We can
the message?
It has improved.
Yeah.
So it has improved in great numbers. It's not what it once was.
Yeah.
And I believe that, I wasn't here when messaging went out, when free transportation, not free transportation, but transportation was offered to all West Parish students. So I believe in communicating that and offering that, it has reduced the numbers immensely of what it once was.
You're saying our cars or?
Cars.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cars, in great number. I've been out there and the line has almost been around the corner. Not working here for Gloucester, but being out there for someone else.
It's been much improved. And also, that campaign, I mean, first of all, we're one of the few districts, not many districts that offer free bus. Right. Especially up on North Shores. Right. So it's school's choice was a good decision last year, we continue this year. So that's one way it helps. And also to help educate folks, and we did this in the kindergarten communications and in our FAQs for folks, just the, it helps environment, it helps get cars off for all the reasons, but that's not something that we push that much this summer, but we'll continue to grow some more capacity.
I can't emphasize enough, my 3 kids were all bus takers. I couldn't wait to get them on the bus and would never think to pick them up and drive. The thing that impressed me the most was, I think we had the same driver for years, that relationship that we had. You're turning your kids over to someone that's gonna make sure that they get to and from school safely. I think that's really important. Should be noted as such. But anything we can do to promote the app and kids getting on the bus.
And I will share with you that it's mutual with the drivers as well.
Yeah,
They
absolutely.
enjoy their families and they enjoy their students. I've had those conversations with drivers here, Gloucester drivers here, who stay on their run for a number of years because they enjoy watching the children grow and move on, and they enjoy the families. So it is mutual.
Yeah, good point.
No, it's happened. Just to say, there's a few groups that have it and some don't.
The consistency.
What is?
The consistency.
The consistency is not forever.
It's just, yeah.
Yeah.
No, there's changes that they.
Yeah.
There are changes.
Yeah, I am done.
So, for the newbies here, what kind of feedback have you gotten to why people, I mean, was it because there was a cost to it previously, and then people just got into the habit of it?
I think people just in the habit
Yeah,
of being with their
and maybe the
kids.
kids got in that expectation of having their parents show up more, who knows?
Some of the responses, it's a social time for parents as they're waiting to pick up their kids.
Oh, really? We can do that at the bus stop.
And we did, I think one of the least reasons was really the financial, and, based upon asking, because it was offered to some families, and we still said no, thank you, to be on it without cost.
Right.
So I think it's a change in behavior. I mean, Safe Routes to Schools is the Mass DOT organization that helps advise on all these kinds of things about sidewalks, and they love for speed bumps and things like that at schools and all that stuff, proper signage. And they have an education program on kind of that whole, 26 cars equals one bus, right? So if we're all, in this for the environment, some of that messaging also help parents.
It's also the congestion, like they were saying, at the new school.
Right.
A lot of people are concerned about that.
Right, and what was the expression about traffic? Like, traffic's not the problem, like, you are part of the problem, right? So if there's an alternate way, you can be.
Yeah. My kids love the bus, but I'm wondering also about the colors you mentioned. They're not gonna be, my kids are on bus 16. I shouldn't maybe divulge that in public, but so why colors?
The colors, because if
They're much easier to keep track of.
it's easier to keep, it is, it's just definitely easier to keep track of, especially if a bus goes down and it changes, the route number is 16, but the driver has to be an 8 today. It's just a matter of messaging to the school and to the students to look for this particular number, where a color, there will only be one color out at each school. So there will only be one bus on that color, and if there's a different change of a bus, because that particular bus goes down, the color will always remain the same.
No matter what, there's numbers on the buses and numbers on the routes.
Yeah.
And sometimes they don't match.
Sometimes often they don't match.
Right.
For a variety of reasons.
Yeah.
And so if you go with, essentially, a color placard in whatever bus is doing that route that day. And whatever driver.
So the numbers coming off the bus.
The numbers aren't coming off the bus, we're just gonna cover them with color.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, yeah.
Right. I'm sorry, yeah.
You won't see
Yes, yes.
effectively, you won't see the number.
They won't.
Another version other schools can do is they go with animals, like the pink pony.
I like that.
Some of them do, some of them don't.
Colors are good.
And it saves the
They're very
children from having to remember a number too. All I have to do is look at it.
Well, I mean, if you look at it in some way now. Good.
Right.
So we're gonna try this year. We'll critique it at the end.
All right, yeah.
Bill had asked about the real-time sort of updates and transponders. I remember last year there was a discussion that there could possibly be an add-on cruise ride. What is it called?
Yes, there could be,
Okay.
but right now, we're gonna work with families this year.
Yeah.
And get them on board with Ride 360. And then we'll discuss and talk about that maybe next year.
Right, yeah, no, that would be
But
great
it
to know.
is, it could be an add-on.
And I think you'd get a lot of people to sign up pretty quickly if they knew that they were getting like a real.
So they can fly across town, get through.
Or just leave their house like 3 minutes before the bus gets there.
Well, there could be a problem, but But right now, this year, we're gonna concentrate on
Yeah,
with families and see where we can.
there's a lot of people who are asking, like, is this, like a GPS, right? And no.
So we might have to add that.
I knew I wasn't crazy, I heard that.
No, it was a discussion, it really was a discussion. There's a lot of parents excited.
Maybe just so one more slide for translations, because we want to set the, just sort of set the table here as we start the school year. And there's a couple of things. So there are also some challenges, so driver resignations, a couple of recent driver resignations, short on drivers at the start of the year. We have a good pipeline, but we're still short right now. Okay, that's, I mean, we're consolidating some routes to manage that. Maybe the routes a little longer, more stops on the route. Buses won't be overcrowded. Okay, and a reminder to folks, those in the room and also those listening at home, at the beginning of the year is always challenging for division in every district. Okay, the routes we sorted out. Gloucester, still summer beach traffic. The circle and the cut, the Grand Circle and the cut can be really problematic. Especially new families don't always let us know they need transportation until the last minute or after school starts. So there's just a lot of sorting out. There is every year. We expect it. We folks and also families to expect it. And within a couple of weeks, almost all it gets sorted out. The buses, arrive earlier. Come go earlier, drop off, on the right times. But there's just some kinks. Those are. So just want to remind folks of that and ask for patience. Lori and Cameron and their team do a fantastic job. And it's always just a little bit of work. Anything to add?
I think that covers it. Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And then we're gonna go back a couple steps. Bob, can you step up?
It's probably
Warming up.
if you go outside that door, it's like 20 degrees more.
All right. So I think I can do this, but I won't do it very good. I won't do this justice. So you might do Greg warms up. Okay. The next one, let's. You want to move to the BF?
Sure. Okay.
You're going to start, Kath, then I'll pick up
Sure.
where you tell me to.
Well, this is not here. So I hope everybody has a chance to watch the recording for some of these items on these updates, because we do subcommittees so that we don't have to redo the work at committee. A lot of this was just some updates. I think Ben would like to go through a couple of them because some of them are more timely to talk about, particularly the window replacement general mailing, which is coming up for vote next week at the MSBA. That has some implications for action at the city council, things like that. So you want to, what do you want to do?
Okay, we'll go backwards.
Yes.
So I can get back. You have to adjust the, well, depending on how you find it, right or wrong time. So could you give us the update on this, all the school professional development and trainings been going on? You got one slide, there's a whole lot.
This is actually not all of it. These are highlights. There were a lot of smaller things going on, but I knew this would just be a quick update. A lot of the trainings involved centered around the elementary pilot. We knew that we needed to launch into the first year of our 2-year implementation for elementary language arts curriculum. So we had a number of items on here: Wit and Wisdom, ELA curriculum launch and module study. We had 40, I think 41 teachers. At the end of June, we had another 24 who were trained this week. And all of that means that those are teachers we won't be pulling out of school for a full day and needing to get subs for. So it was really important for us to do that. We had GEOs, which is companion foundations. Melissa Francis did some foundations training just today. But our math and literacy coaches have been doing New Teacher Academy all week. And our new teachers have been with adding tomorrow, will have done 4 days straight of training prior to the school year even starting. We had some, in some cases, small group or one-to-one FOSS science training for elementary school. We started this summer with up at the top a 15-hour English learner course that helps teachers fulfill their 5-year requirement for 15 hours in English EL training. And that was called Filling the Gaps for EL Students. Universal Design for Learning workshops. Let's see, and then 2 weeks ago, is it not 2 weeks, or was it just last week?
Last week.
We did 3 days of training for the leadership retreat. So those are just some of the things that were going on this year for training to get the year started.
Okay. I just need a quick reminder, the
Yeah.
Wit and Wisdom ELA curriculum launch, K-5, is that all the schools, all the grades?
That's all schools, roughly half of the teachers this year, and we concentrated on all new teachers. Anybody new to the district definitely was trained in Wit and Wisdom and is implementing. And then what we did was we took pilot grade levels that had done one teacher in 4th at Plum Cove, for example, one teacher in 5th at another school. We felt that it made logically to have those teaching partners in 5th grade in a school. So if one teacher piloted at Plum Cove last year in 4th grade, last year doing the pilot, that the full grade would be trained. So that one wasn't on their own and the other staying. So just doing that alone, plus new teachers, we ended up with almost half of the teachers.
So could you, like at each elementary school, who is doing the curriculum? Like which grades?
It varies.
Okay.
Yes, at each school, depending on, again, how the initial pilot went and what grade level was piloted. So it's not going to be exactly the same at every school. Just as a reminder, our decision to do half and half is because we want to make sure that we have the best and most support for teachers who were starting this year. And by pairing them, making sure that the piloters from last year, I'll just give another example. Let's say we've got 4th grade at West Parish. If one of those team members already piloted, by bringing those others on this year, they're not only getting training, external training, but they're getting embedded support. There are some grades where nobody piloted, and so they would all be fresh. And by doing this, we can maximize the expertise and the coaching and piloting and the partners, and do it in 2 stages. And so we'll have all of that expertise that then is in year 2 while the others are starting. So not exactly the same at every school.
Okay. All right. We'll do this.
Thank you.
So just, I'm going to give you a couple updates here, and as Kathy said, quite timely, also not quick. So we gave you a quote that I believe about mailing. So this is the timeline. We are, as Kathy said, in our SBA board meeting next Wednesday, today, to be approved for work here to replace all the windows and all the external doors, also that thing up there, skylight. And all the clear storage, all the commons out there, all the windows that are sort of skylight, all of them are replaced. And so it's called Accelerated Repair Program with the state, and it is accelerated. We have 30 days after the approval of the board to sign a PFA, and 90 days from that for the city to secure the funding for it. We're talking about that moment, so already working with the mayor and his team to make sure that that's in place, and the process in place to get those approvals. Construction documents are complete November 2022, and then the bid is going to proceed later this year. The bidding starts happening in December. The work will happen next summer to substantial completion. In terms of, I think since we last met, not quite sure, since we last met, the schematic design was finalized. I think we shared that number with you before last school year ended. What has happened since then is the MSBA has reviewed the schematic design and returned with us to total project cost has been adjusted to 6.4 million, adjusted downward 6.4 million, and they've told us what is reimbursable of that design. And 3.5, just over $3.5 million is reimbursable at a rate of 6.64%. That means that the cost to the city will be $2.8 million. We have to make the funding of the whole, the total costs available, and secure that funding, and then they reimburse us. Just we never, it doesn't really, we will still only have a maximum cost of $2.8 million, but essentially it happens on a reimbursement basis. Yes, if the reimbursements are coming in, fast enough, essentially, we got to be able to cover our costs, especially projects happening so quickly, as opposed to the new building happens over a number of years. So. And then that's just details I've already explained in terms of the amount of reimbursement, but there's also some contingency in the project, and so the reimbursement could potentially go up to $3.7 million if we use all that contingency. I hope as you don't, but it's there just in case.
So for the sake of public consumption, can you highlight that second sentence in the first bullet?
So yes, so the effective reimbursement is 58%. We're paying for every dollar of this private cost, the city's paying only 40%, which is a great deal, I think, particularly in large projects like this, where really the intention, I skipped the intention here, the intention is to, as we're doing very well in all our buildings today, is to make sure they can last for the long term. And that requires ongoing upkeep, maintenance, repair. Also requires modernizing them, and this will help them become much more energy efficient. Cooler in the warm months and warmer in cold months. Save on energy bills, sort of thing. And also make sure that
more comfortable learning environment.
More comfortable learning environment and working environment, of course.
And AC will be above freezing.
It may help, but there's some other factors there too.
Can I just point out too, because one of the complaints that's been going on forever is that the city never invested in their buildings, never did the routine maintenance. And I think that the last several years, that's certainly not what it is. So this is just further evidence that we're trying to do what we can, making up for lost time, unfortunately. But I think 42 cents in the dollar is an excellent deal. If we didn't take that money from MSBA and other municipalities.
And this is a project we didn't think we actually be in the pipeline for another year or two. The MSBA, right, assumed on our first attempt, and we're going for it. So
another piece of proof that our buildings needed these new windows.
Yeah.
Right.
These are the original windows and many original doors, and yeah, this is what we do.
Is the city, I mean, obviously the city's aware of what is it a one-time payment that the city makes to cover the city's cost, or is it?
Well, like Ben said, we'll have to bond the full amount. And then, as the bills come in, we pay them, and then as we submit them to MSBA, we can reimburse them. So we pay down the loan faster.
And then these are the next steps, is and sort of cover these two, but MSBA approves the project funding agreement on August 31st, and we have to decide, we'll get back to you as soon as next week, and it's just what that process is. And we'll report back to you the good news later that night, because that's obviously our school meeting. We've got approved the funding for the total budget within 90 days. And then, continue with the bids, finish the construction documents, prepare the bids. The bids go out in November and December, and work in December 2023. We'll take the modular work up to another level next year. This next year, some part, which will be all the windows and doors here. So, move on to playgrounds. So the only sort of update since we last provided the update, which I think was in our August 3rd meeting, is that we've identified, on the process, identified the installers for the projects, completed the procurement process. But the timeline remains. Dismantle playgrounds. When we know we have a deliverable of the playground, the new ones, okay, we won't do that before. That could happen in late September if our installers assure us that they are ready to install. Also may go into November, October, November, but the key thing is that we'll work in a way where there's no playground for the least amount of time. But what's important there is timeline for installation may change a little bit. That's supply chain. So there is a chance that this gets, when we got quotes, folks were focused timelines from September to next spring. And even with these folks that there's a possibility. They've assured us that they can go, I can install in November, but I just want us to approve it. So we're going with Emmy O'Brien with the Plumco Playground. And then Grenice is the contractor the city works with for the for leveling surfaces. DPW will take out the old equipment. Grenice will level the surface and get ready, prepared for the installation. And then Emmy O'Brien at Plum Cove will be the installers. They have the equipment. And then we'll work with the engineer with the community, school community, organized by the PTO to install the surface, which is engineered wood fiber. So this this table shows you that we anticipated that it would be about $169,000 for purchase installation. The quote came in at just over $162,000, so we're under by about $6,500 on what we expected for Plum Cove. Beeman, we're going with Compan. That's all the same company that's going to be installing the playground at that new East Gloucester Vets building. Again, they came in underneath what the estimated cost was. Estimated cost was over $200,000. They came in under $76,000. So there's a difference there, almost $22,000. So that's good. Coming under what we anticipated in the budget for. In terms of budget costs, all these costs you've seen tonight are being funded by the ESSER 3 grant. We'll install engineered wood fiber as an initial surface, paid for by ESSER. We'd like to move to a poured rubber surface over time to make the playgrounds fully accessible. The engineered wood fiber qualifies to make it accessible, but the poured rubber surface will be a much longer term approach, and we'll work with the city to identify the surface. This year, so yeah.
What is engineered wood fiber?
It is like pellets.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. That compacts and still soft, but
yeah, that makes sense.
It's a fake wood bark, is that what you're saying?
I don't know what exactly.
It's not wood chips.
No, it's not wood chips. It might be like sort of the fake version.
Yes, what I was
getting
yeah.
Great. Okay.
Good news.
All right, so we continue to get information on 2 Blackburn Drive, trying to figure out what the long-term solution there is. Melissa introduced the topic of the school committee compensation. We discussed just very briefly about gathering information as to comparable, getting information about what other communities have for their compensation. So we just had a baseline to know what's out there and where we stand versus that. And it was pointed out that it has been adjusted in a very long time. So we're going to continue that research so we can continue with the discussion. We also had discussion around the building use policy, the procedure and fees, but nothing was decided. So we are continuing that. I think we're supposed to meet ideally, probably maybe an extra meeting in between now and the next regular BNF, or at the latest it will be at BNF the next time. I think the fees that have been brought forward we're comfortable with. We've looked at the packet. It's just the category of which organizations might fall into what pay scheme is. Yeah, so we're continuing that topic. And since I'm the chair and we're moving on to action, we can take action from the BNF meeting. So the other item that I did not mention yet is the administration brought forward a recommendation to increase the substitute worker wage adjustments for food service and supervisors and crossing guards. So we had a discussion on what those rates were, and it was explained as to what those rates are relative to what our current contracts are for those particular positions. It's also been brought up that it's sometimes very hard to get these substitutes. And so we unanimously approved, and I will make a motion that we approve an increase in substitute pay for food service workers, noon supervisors, and crossing guards to $16 per hour.
Second.
Discussion. What was it for?
For food services,
14.
Yeah, $14.50 for food service, $12 for food supervisors, and crossing guards probably for $12.
And these are the substitutes for the regular crossing.
So and the $16 is lower than what our employees earn. And there are not a lot of substitutes in these areas, so the impact on the budget is negligible. I guess a little.
Because I know people that do some of these jobs and they're like, it's hard for them to take any days off. So it'd be great if there was a pool of people that just, you know, on commitment, but there. So we hope this will make that difference.
So what's the, say, comparable salary or wage for full-time, say, crossing guard or something like the lowest level? What was the differential?
Yeah, noon supervisor, I think it was $16.50 to start. Yeah, and crossing guard at the store, so food service will be different positions at different scales.
So it's pretty close to the entry.
Yeah, it's not that far. Yeah, it's pretty close. A little bit further away from the food service, but close.
Maria, may we have a roll call vote, please?
Mayor Verda.
Yes.
Ms. Watson.
Yes.
Ms. Weason.
Yes.
Chairperson Clancy.
Yes.
Mr. Melvin.
Yes.
Mr. Minio.
Yes.
Okay, passes unanimously, 6 votes for. Next item of action is approval to appoint the superintendent as a board member of the North Shore Education Consortium, which is something we do every year. So we need to take a formal vote so that they have him approved.
So
Second.
Okay, discussion. Thank you. Maria, roll call vote, please.
Mayor Verda.
Yes.
Ms. Watson.
Yes.
Ms. Weason.
Yes.
Chairperson Clancy.
Yes.
Mr. Melvin.
Yes.
And Mr. Minio.
yes.
And we've already approved the school handbooks. Next item of business is an update on the East Cluster / Veterans Memorial School Building update. I know there's something I'm supposed to report about the school. Going up, it's going up. Second, getting close.
Brick facing down there.
Yeah, left side of the house, it did now, looks great.
Hoping to do some, this fall, some of the, a fair bit of the ground.
Landscape.
Not landscaping, but, you know, just, yeah. Like, what do you call it?
Should we like and ask for
Probably with those engineered wood chips.
Grading, site work. I think we had a building committee around the location.
We did. We approved change order, but change, well, actually, but some of them were incorporated in the value engineering already, so they were incorporated into the budget. This other one is, I can't remember what the change is. Just did the update bill if anybody wants to read the project website, and all of it falls within the contingency. So
we're also looking at, we reviewed some location of benches or location of possible benches in case folks want to donate benches to the ground. Not necessarily more benches, but just benches. So without anything out. So talk that through. Do site work.
and our next meeting is second week of September.
It says, obviously.
Next week.
We're talking about the building.
The
We're talking about the building.
Okay, yeah, I'll delay it.
Like school meeting is it?
Can't get enough to that. Okay. All right, so that concludes our regular business. We are going into executive session for the purpose of discussing a personnel contract pursuant to Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, and we'll return to open session to adjourn. Second.
Sorry.
Okay, Maria, call roll, please.
Mayor Verda.
Yes.
Ms. Watson.
Yes.
Ms. Eason. Yes. Chair Rosenfranci.
Yes.
Mr. Melvin.
Yes.
And Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Thank you to those attendees that hung in here with us tonight. And so we will sign out here and will not return. We will adjourn. We will. We will come back to public, but we don't need to go into Zoom to do it. So we'll have no discussion or anything after that.